Nintendo is charging $80 for Mario Kart in their new Switch 2, and I really hate what that's going to do to gaming now, because it means every other game on any platform is going to be a minimum of $70 or $80. Because these games are already expensive as is. Like, the minimum is $60, most are between like $65 and $70, maybe $75, and like, it's getting expensive in every other aspect. Like, you know, to play online, you're paying at least $20, $25.
Why are digital copies of games more expensive? This is a digital copy for $70? Aside from the fact that Call of Duty is like always the same game, they aren't paying for disc, manufacturing, cases, none of that. Why is this still 60 or 70 bucks?
There's been a lot of talk lately about gaming prices, especially with how expensive some modern titles have become. And we're actually at this weird time now where if a developer prices their game at 20 bucks, it somehow turns into a controversy, which is really strange.
Imagine waiting 7 years for Hollow Knight Silksong thinking, oh, it's probably gonna be $30, $40. Dog, 20 bucks. 20 bucks, bro? Oh my god. Mind you, this is probably the biggest indie release of all time, right? So people were willing to fork over at least like 30, 40 bucks, right? $20. $20 just to show, hey, even if it's been 7 years, 10 years, doesn't matter how much time passes. Yeah, we gonna price it like this, bitch.
So in this article, it says, I can't afford to give it away for free, which is a quote by someone, we'll get into that later. And the headline continues by stating Silksong's low price is causing devs to reevaluate their own games. The article continues by saying, after an exceptionally long wait, Hollow Knight Silksong is out now on the Switch and Switch 2, and perhaps one of the most pleasantly surprising aspects of its launch is its price. You're looking at $19.99, 16.75 pounds, 19.99 euros, and 2,300 yen. And that's for the new release, which, given the sheer length of its development and presumptions around its runtime, seems very reasonable indeed. Some folks, however, think that Team Cherry has legitimately priced the game too low, and therefore may be distorting players' expectations regarding what a $20 game should look like. So I understand, but to answer the title, nobody is saying you have to give away your game for free. You can put it at full price and see what happens, or your idea of what a full price is, then decide whether it was worth the risk of pricing out audiences who might have bought your game if it happened to be at a more reasonable price.
This really is just a crazy flex under Team Cherry's belt, bro, because imagine making a game for 7 years and only charging 20 bucks, bro. No one could ever do this except Team Cherry.
What the hell? Hollow Knight Silksong dropped yesterday, and I'm not gonna lie, I was unfamiliar with this game's motion. I need y'all to understand something right now. The first Hollow Knight has 54,000 people on right now. First game also just reached a new peak of around 70,000 players. Great numbers, but nothing too crazy. The second game should have a reasonably smooth launch. What the fuck? Where the hell did all y'all come from? This might be the craziest indie game launch of all time. Dog, these motherfuckers broke Steam. Steam had so much traffic yesterday, the shit legit crashed. Bro, I don't think I've ever seen that. And it wasn't just Steam either. Y'all broke the PlayStation Store too. You would try to buy the game, it would just show you this shit. Fuck you mean wishlist? The game was supposed to be out. But not only did y'all crash Steam and the PlayStation Store, y'all broke the Nintendo Store. This shit is fucking crazy. It seemed like the only consistent place to get the game when it dropped was Game Pass. These people waited 7 years in the dark for this game, fam. I had friends genuinely losing it trying to figure out when this shit was coming. I never played the first one, and even I can see. This shit is the GTA 6 of Metroidvania.
But at the end of the day, it really comes down to doing the math. Would you rather have people buying your game en masse at a price they're willing to pay, or only a handful at full price before it crashes and burns? Or not. So anyway, we had the solo developer of Lone Fungus weighing in, as per what the article said, and asked what the sequel, Melody of Spores, should be priced at now that Silksong has launched. And this is something that he or she was asking on X, aka Twitter. This is the post, and Lone Fungus says, as a dev making a smaller Metroidvania than Silksong, which I originally, though, I think he means thought, would be fairly priced at 20 USD, what should I price it now? It'll be a 10 to 15 plus hour game, but it was made by one person with limited dev time and funds. I can't afford to give it away for free. And then they reposted Silksong, which was already out at the time of this video. Again, it's worth reiterating that you don't necessarily have to give your game away for free. I know what the terminology means, and you don't necessarily have to undercut another game just because it's out there. If you make a good game, people are going to buy it, and they'll be even more encouraged to buy it if you price it fairly for what kind of game it is. It does suck, though, because a lot of people put years of time and energy into something, and sometimes it just doesn't work out. You could say the same thing about marriages and relationships, too, or even raising kids. I've known devs who spent 7 years on a project, and in the end, the game was just asked, and nothing came of it, or nothing came of it. And that's the reality. The end product is what matters. What's more important is making sure that you're driven by passion, first of all, but also managing your finances in a way where you're not completely overextending yourself. I think people need to get back into the habit of seeing that less is more. You'll see a bigger benefit when you're not sinking in so much money into things you might not get back. I know it's easier said than done since development requires software, you've got assets, and a ton of other resources, especially if you're working solo.
I'm tired of this, Grandpa.
That's too damn bad!
But Silksong, Minecraft, Terraria, all of those prove that you can have games priced exactly where they should be, and if the game is fun and people love it, they're gonna buy it. Now, the very commendable thing about this developer is that he seems very active in his community and has basically asked people to weigh in. He's listening to his community, or she, I don't really know what gender they are, and he or she seems to be receptive from what we can see here on the thread. But then you've got people like RJ Lake, who comes across way less receptive and honestly a bit entitled in how they talk about the consumers. And we see that the introduction of that through the article is in this section here. Now, the main observable thread as it stands is this, and RJ says, they can price however they want. As a result, their return on investment is infinite no matter what they do. But by charging such a low amount, they're causing lizard brain signals to fire off saying, this kind of game is worth $20. You should expect this game for $20. He proceeds by saying, if enough of those lizard brains signal fire, some kinds of games with actual budgets to pay people who need to live are going to get priced out of existence unless they can get the kind of organic groundswell you can't plan for. I'm not worried about me. Unbeatable, actually, is a game like that. It has that kind of following. We'll probably be fine. But we could not price Unbeatable at lower than what we're going to price it as for a lot of reasons. Not every game gets lucky like we did, and we did get lucky, and it shouldn't be the default expectation. Now, at first glance, this honestly comes across as though he's looking at the consumers and us gamers as though we're some kind of creature that lacks the ability to understand why things cost the way they do or how much they do. It comes off very condescending, and it's also kind of wrong. Players are very good at quantifying what something is worth to them. Time, enjoyment, replay value, uniqueness, all of those weigh into whether or not they'll spend the money or feel like it was worth it for them spending that money. Acting like players are these brainless lizard brain buyers who can't tell value apart is a superior mentality that puts the blame on the consumers rather than recognizing that ultimately the onus is on the devs to make something that people actually want to pay for and feel good about having paid for it. And the irony is that what RJ Lake seems to miss is that the same lizard brain that he's attributing to consumers is the same instinct that he is using himself as a dev. He's trying to stay, well, I wouldn't outright say stay, but he kind of is in survival mode by resisting change instead of adapting to what the consumers want. How is that not the same primal instinct to protect your own interests just from the other side of the equation or coin? The only difference is that we don't need to buy your game, but you need us to buy it so that you can reap a profit. If players gravitate towards a certain price point, that is simply just the market speaking.
The largest video game companies like EA and Microsoft Game Studios are actively putting out worse games while charging more for them. And it is due to the economic system that incentivizes them to put profit over product quality. For someone to unironically say that Battlefield 2042 was a masterpiece off launch, you have to be a bot or a corporate plant. No other way about it. And the amount of people commenting this on the original post, really saying that these three games were good on launch, just shows that they would rather blindly accept an ideology than confront the problems within it. Because all people see is the surface level. People see saying that capitalism is not, in fact, making the video game industry better, and they just go, Rah! It is a fact that Battlefield 2042 and Fallout 76 on launch were the worst titles in both series.
You can either kick against the prick, which is a saying my mom used to use, and blame the consumers for not valuing your game correctly, or you can adjust and figure out how to work within that reality. The other irony is that calling gamers basically bad at knowing why things cost the way they do is really just saying, oh, I don't want to change my expectations, but I want them to change theirs. But survival, whether you're talking about lizard brains or game development, is about how well you can adapt to the environment and what it expects of you. Guess what happens when you don't adapt or stagnate in delusion? Eventually, you fail and you die out. It's fine that he thinks Unbeatable, a game I've honestly never heard of, so go check it out, I guess. But Yeah, it's great that he thinks that, oh, they'll be okay, and maybe they will. Maybe the game will be fine. But saying that low prices could price games out of existence, it just feels like he's missing the bigger point. Games don't die because, oh no, that thing over there, they price their thing lower. Most of the time games fail is when people don't feel like they're worth the asking price. And plenty of examples like Silksong, Minecraft, Terraria, like I said, for crying out loud, even Flappy Bird, they prove that fun, well-made games can succeed massively even at modest price points. They have been doing this for many decades. To me, real talent is, not real talent, but I think it's especially impressive when you're able to create something without sinking massive amounts of money into it, yet still reaping a greater reward than those with full development teams and nearly unlimited funding. So yeah, price doesn't necessarily kill a game. What kills a game is lack of quality, lack of connection, or poor marketing, which we've seen happen over and over again. In addition to that, what can also kill a game is the way the developers frame their relationship with consumers. If you start talking like players are the enemy or these obstacles that need to be conquered or tools meant to serve you, that attitude is going to backfire. It has been backfiring. It always backfires, and people always get shocked when it does because gamers pick up on that energy very quickly. They're still consumers. People need to remember that. They're not this oddity or otherworldly species. And especially now, and no matter how good the game is, they'll resent being treated like they're part of the problem rather than the very people keeping the industry alive. I don't know in any situation where bees are stinging you because you messed with them first and then they decide to grace you with their compassion and stop stinging you because you swat at them more. It's a little crazy how people in this industry, people within it, seem to believe that higher prices equal better value. We've seen a plethora of larger high-budget titles, like Concord, for example, fail miserably despite being priced at the standard AAA range. You can check out some of the articles on it. I think someone who even was part of the dev group came out and shed some light on the whole thing. But yeah, that game failed as miserably as they did because the product itself didn't resonate with players. People responded to his comment saying, yeah, so an indie game shouldn't cost $60. Hell, a full-fledged AAA game shouldn't cost 70 fucking euros. Another person said, well, Team Cherry, the people behind Silksong, can't really be responsible over how people choose to signify something as the pricing of its game. Another said, I decided to take a look at what kind of game you had, and mine has been hidden in Steam for a long time. I hope you will sell your creation for no less than $70. Make good games, don't whine. Another person said in response to RJ, that is the dumbest hot take I've ever heard. You're basically saying every gamer should expect to be ripped off because big company need money. And that is, again, the dumbest thing. This person was angry when they wrote this, I can tell. Again, that is the dumbest thing you could have said. Paying $80 to over $100 should not ever be normalized in gaming ever. And I guess the developer, or RJ, replied to him saying, hi, I'm very flattered that you made a Blue Sky account just to talk to me. That's so sweet. That's so immature. I'm immature, and I'm saying that's immature. Maybe this guy, original Sparkster, or whatever his name is, who made the dumbest hot take comment, maybe, yeah, he was a bit angry with this. But this is where you can clearly see that gamers are not receptive to being told, oh, you should just accept higher prices because big companies say, you know, we need more money and we have all these expensive. When someone calls that the dumbest hot take they've ever heard, which this guy did, I kind of understand where they're coming from because he really is shining a mirror back at the big studios by saying, yeah, you're telling us that we should expect to be ripped off and we should just deal with it being expensive because we say it costs that much and that's what you should pay. That's not a sustainable argument. And it ignores the reality of people's lives and the expenses that other people have to dish out. You're probably making more than the average person with what you do.
Problem isn't the game is $80, $90, or $100. The problem is that although the games are $80, $90, $100, just like they'd be $45, $50, and $60 20 years ago, our wages haven't increased. It's the same conversation. Why are we doing this every time we see prices of video games rise? We know what's happening. We know why we're mad. Like, it's not just because the game costs more. It's the game costs more and my money is worth less.
Responding to potential consumers or people that you need to win over because you need their business for your company to continue doing well or to do well in the future, and replying and saying, oh, I'm flattered that you just made an account to talk to me. That's so sweet. That's not really helping your case. I don't know if studios know this, but most people aren't pulling in $3,000 a month. And even those who are, they're dealing with rising rent. They're dealing with tuition they have to pay off, food costs, insurance, utilities, healthcare, all these other things, including people who have children and needing to feed them and the medical bills and all of that. In an economy where everything is getting more expensive, it's not a hard concept to grasp that people are not going to be excited about paying $80 to $100 for a single game. Like, that kind of pricing alienates a huge chunk of the player base, especially when there are equally good and often better experiences available for $20 or less. That is Consumer 101. I want to present one of the points that this developer, RJ, makes and try to see things from his point of view and then explain why I don't agree. And I could be wrong. I leave the door open. Good grief. That was a really big belch. Are you okay, puppy? Well, she enjoyed that. Anyway, yeah, so I'll leave the door open that I could be wrong. But at this moment in time, I disagree. And further here on the thread, RJ says, Silksong honestly should cost $40, and I'm not even joking. I won't go so far as to say it's bad. It doesn't. Wait. I won't go so far as to say it's bad. Oh, it's bad that it doesn't cost $40. Okay, I understand. But it will have effects, and not all those effects are good. Sorry, it's trying to read text presentation, but okay. Yeah, so he said not all of those effects are good. He continues by saying millions of people will probably buy Silksong on day one, and it was a game that had a very low budget because the budget is these devs worked on it without direct pay for however long they wanted to do that. That's what he said in quotations. It had a quote-unquote, these devs are independently wealthy budget of, another quote, effectively $0. He then continues by stating they can price however low they want. As a result, their return on investment is infinite no matter what they do. But by charging such a low amount, they're causing lizard brain signals to fire off saying, this kind of game is worth $20. You should expect this game for $20. So that's basically the start of his thread. That's more of it opened up. And that's where we get the rest of it here. Okay, so now I want to try and look at his point fairly before I go into my disagreement. What this guy seems to be saying is that Silksong had an effectively zero budget because Team Cherry didn't take direct pay during development and worked on it however long they wanted, which is what is common said. From his perspective, that gives them, as he said, the freedom to price their game as low as they want because their return on investment is going to look huge compared to a studio that has to pay salaries to a bunch of people and outsource assets and license tech or fund a full dev team. He's worried that by pricing it at $20, a game of that scale, polish, and hype sets this precedent where consumers subconsciously think, oh, if Silksong is $20, then other games like it should also be $20. And I can see why that would feel threatening to a dev working with actual budgets and payroll because he's worried about unfair comparisons. So I understand where his personal fear is coming from or concern. Here's why I don't necessarily agree, though. First of all, the idea that Team Cherry's budget was zero isn't really true. Just because they didn't pay themselves a salary doesn't mean the game was costless. But let's just say he's likely exaggerating here, and it's just an exaggeration on his part. Even still, it cost them years of their lives. I mean, opportunity cost, that's another one people don't consider. Living expenses they covered somehow, and that has value. Acting like the game is free to make or almost free to make is very dismissive of the work involved. Secondly, the precedent doesn't work as cleanly as he seems to be framing the whole thing. Gamers don't say, oh, every platform or style game must cost $20 now. They look at the game itself and decide if the price feels fair. That's why you see people happily paying $60 for AAA games or titles and franchises, and they'll also buy $5 indie games in the same breath. It's perceived value. It's not this single set baseline. I myself have bought games for $60 and the price felt warranted. And I've also bought games for $5.99 or lower and the price didn't feel warranted because the game was so horrible that to me it didn't even warrant the $6 price point. I actually felt mad about spending any money on it whatsoever.
Oh no, video games are getting more expensive. It'd be a shame if somebody compiled a list of all the places you could try to find cracked games. Just be careful with your computer though, please. Don't click on any sketchy download buttons. I understand that this is a skill that you have to learn. Okay, it's 2025. Don't click on any .rar files called definitely not malware.xex. Don't install anything with like a setup final.cmd. No bat files. Unless you want your PC to sound like a jet engine and start mining crypto for somebody in Belarus. Anyway, video games used to be $60 as the standard. Now it's $70. And Nintendo went, what if it was $80? And everybody kind of just accepted it. I mean, we threw a fit, but Nintendo didn't change anything. Games launch unfinished, you guys. They sell you the rest in a DLC, and if it breaks, it's your fault for pre-ordering. But hey, game is art, and I support artists. I'm not supporting piracy. I'm not encouraging that. Piracy is wrong. You wouldn't steal a car. You wouldn't steal a handbag. You wouldn't download a pizza. But you might just download a 120 gigabyte AAA mess that fired half the developers and locked the ending behind $30. So no, I would not recommend you check out any of these websites listed. These are not suggestions at all.
Finally, the lizard brain argument kind of ignores the whole nuance of consumers and basic normal human behavior. Yes, understandably, people are going to notice pricing trends, but they're also perfectly capable of being able to distinguish between a handcrafted solo project and a huge AAA title and all these other things in between. If a game is fun, if it's finished, and fairly priced for what it offers, people will happily pay. Pricing a game low is not the issue. It's releasing something that's either unfinished, or has a bunch of bugs, it's not optimized correctly, or it's predatory in its pricing or the microtransactions, so people feel like they're being ripped off while receiving less value for what they paid, which seems to be happening a lot nowadays, especially when it comes to AAA titles. Silksong selling at $20 doesn't magically now mean the rest of the industry has to panic and start feeling threatened unless you believe that your game isn't of good quality. It just means that Team Cherry set a fair price for their game, what they thought was fair, and consumers will decide if other devs have done the same. That's all it boils down to. I myself, what I do as an author, I usually do like series of books, but what I do is I will take a loss and I will price my books like 99 cents or $2. I know people on Reddit would disagree, but my idea is this is going to be a 10-book series, a 7-book series, a 12-book series. If people are going to go on for the ride and they pay for the first book, they want to see if it's worth it even sticking around. $2 is a very, very low price for a book with 60,000 to 100,000 words. And usually what happens is, because of the quality of my books, based on what my reviews tell me, people love it and they stick around, and then I'll price the other ones accordingly. People would usually say on Reddit, well, you shouldn't just give away your book for free, but that's my choice, knowing that if I do that, I will reap the benefits in the long run because people will stick around, so I can price my other books at $6 or $7, even though I know that there are other people in the sphere that are pricing their books $5 more. But number one, I want to get my stuff out there more. And also, I know that I'm going to reap the profit from the royalties, and more people are going to be willing to spend their money on it, getting that quality and spending less for it than they are with other books. It's just about marketing and taking advantage of the market. And it's okay. Does this threaten other authors that are looking at me and saying, well, she's selling her books that have more words in the same category for half the price? That's somehow a problem to me. It shouldn't be, because they have their own community. They have their own niche. And if they're making good quality stories, there is room for people to enjoy my stories and series and franchises, and also enjoy the series and franchises of other authors. So that's really all it is. Anyway, do you think that this is a warranted fear from the developer or other developers that share the same perspective? He's basically saying Silksong should have been priced at $40, and that selling it at $20 will train players to expect all games like it to cost the same, potentially hurting those devs with higher budgets. I understand why he's scared or concerned, but I don't necessarily agree for the reasons that I've said. But what are your thoughts?
this cannot be understated. You've got meme posts like this, reposts to make Silksong cost an additional $10 because this is such a baller move that people just want to give Team Cherry more money, because even at $30, it feels like the customers will be making away like thieves because it's just such a low price point for the quality and amount of content that this will offer.